Angela Merkel doubles down on her pitch for an EU recovery plan. She also warned member states that there was no time to lose. The German Chancellor had her first face-to-face meeting since the pandemic with French President Emmanuel Macron, who warned waiting around won't work. It serves as the starkest warning yet from Europe's two biggest powers to the so-called frugal four who are opposing the plan. Joining us now from Brussels is Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo. So, Maria, Angela Merkel really going a step further even than she and Macron had gone the last time they pitched a deal here, right?
Yeah, exactly. And look, what we know is that European leaders are going to meet in 3 weeks' time. The discussion here really is about the recovery fund. And the question is, how quickly will this be signed off? Now, Angela Merkel yesterday, and this is where it gets very interesting, she said two things that are really crucial here. One is the fact that there is going to be no counteroffer made to the 500 billion euro recovery fund that would be paid out in grants, that would be tapped by the European Commission in the markets. And that is not going to change. France and Germany don't want to see that figure change. And even if we do see negotiations being extended into the summer, the Germans don't want to change that amount of number. They don't want to change that figure. And then secondly, you also had Angela Merkel saying this is really a priority. It needs to get done in July. There is no point waiting around. And it really does change things in the balance of power in Europe, whether this is Angela Merkel looking into self-preservation. Germany, at the end of the day, is a country that needs to export and needs a strong single market or a big political gesture. It's clear now that Angela Merkel really has thrown all of her political capital here, which has increased as a result of the coronavirus and the way that she handled this crisis by saying, we want this amount of money, 500 billion euros, and we want this done before the end of the summer. It has to get done.
Yeah, I think it's especially interesting that Merkel is pushing for this, considering it's the Germans who were seemingly most against the idea of shared debt, at least the only big economy that was. Listen to what Angela Merkel said last night in Meseberg.
Of course, all of us here have our national interests. However, I would say that it is not due to both of us here that the EU budget was not completed at the last meeting in February. I think we have a very good feeling about what should come out of this, and the diverging interests have actually gone elsewhere. We do not need to present any new proposals now.
She's essentially giving the others an ultimatum here, isn't she, Maria? Because she's saying there won't be any other plan. This is it.
That's right. So there is no other offer. That figure, that 500 billion euros in grants, which is really such a significant step and such a deviation from the standard German policy, as you pointed out, that's not going to change. The Germans are not really going to move on that. And I would also point to the words of Emmanuel Macron, who also said that is not changing. The only thing that's really at stake at this point is just how quickly can we get it done. Of course, too, Matt, if you look at the situation, Germany tomorrow is becoming or taking over the presidency of the EU Council for the next 6 months. There's a lot going on for Angela Merkel. She's already said that when you look at policy priorities, the recovery fund needs to get done before the summer, not just because it's good for the single market, but also because there could be a lot of turbulence towards the end of the year. You have the Brexit negotiations, you still have the US election, and of course, potentially more tariffs coming into Europe. So it is imperative almost for the Germans now to just get this done quickly. For leaders who are fiscally conservative in Europe, like Mark Rutte, of course, this is going to be a major blow to see Angela Merkel, who was a former ally on those fiscally conservative policies, now almost switching sides and saying, we need to do this. There is really, at this point, no other alternative.
And let me ask you about Germany taking over the running of the rotating presidency within the EU, Maria. We know that China is set to be one of the priorities. We're going to, in fact, have an interview a little bit later on this subject. But what will the top priority policies be for Germany?
Right. So when you look at Angela Merkel, she's already said there's two. Over the short term, we need to focus on the recovery fund. That is really where the focus will be for the next few weeks. Over the long term, it's interesting, though, that she is saying it really is China. You know, we have to recalibrate the relationship here, China and the European Union. We've heard repeatedly from many European companies that they complain that they don't get the type of access that Chinese companies get in Europe, and that they also worry that some of the Chinese companies are major majorly subsidized by the Chinese government, and that gives them a huge advantage over their European counterparts. So that is something that Angela Merkel has repeated needs to be recalibrated in this presidency of Germany. And it's interesting because it's also a change in tone from Angela Merkel. For a very long time, Germany has really profited from this relationship, and they could have gone quiet on this. It works, why change it? But now Angela Merkel clearly saying it's not all great. We really need to recalibrate and make this a relationship that is much more fair and balanced for the European companies.